Mexico, officially the United Mexican States, it is a country in the southern portion of North America. It is bordered to the north by the United States, to the south by the west by the Pacific Ocean, to the southeast by Guatemala, Belize, and the Caribbean Sea, and to the east by the Gulf of Mexico. Mexico covers 1,972,550 square kilometers, making it the world's 30th largest country by area with approximately 126,014,024 inhabitants. It is the 10th most populous country and has the most Spanish speakers. Mexico is organized as a federation comprising 31 states and Mexico City, its capital and largest metropolis. The type of law enforcement is decentralized. Estimated strength is 500,000. Overview. Law enforcement in Mexico is divided between federal, state, and municipal local entities. There are 2 federal police forces, 31 state police forces, and 2 for Mexico City, and an investigation of the Executive Secretariat of the National Public Safety System indicates that there are 1,807 municipal police forces. Department. Mexico maintains 2 primary federal police agencies, the National Guard, the Uniformed Paramilitary Force, and an investigative force and called the Policia Federal Ministerial. They are sometimes referred to by Hollywood and the American media by the slang term federales. Types of law enforcement. Law enforcement services in Mexico are shared between federal, border, traffic, state, and municipal police. The 2 principal police forces with national remit are the Uniformed Police called Policia Federal and the Plainclothes Criminal Investigations Force called Policia Federal Ministerial or PFM. History. In 1521, Spanish Conquistador Hernan Cortes conquered the Aztecs and Mexico became a Spanish colony. For 300 years, Spain ruled the land until the early 80s. Father Miguel Hidalgo declared Mexico's independence with his famous cry of Viva Mexico. In 1821, Mexico defeated the Spanish and gained full independence.
There is an old Aztec legend about the founding of this city. While the Aztecs were looking for a new land, their principal god led them to their new home, an island in the middle of a lake, by showing them a sign, an eagle perched on a cactus with a snake in his beak. This is how, in 1325, the city of Tenochtitlan became the capital of the Aztec Empire. 2 decades later, the city was one of the largest and richest urban area in the world at that time. In 1519, Spanish invaders, led by Hernan Cortes, arrived in New Spain. Moctezuma, chief of the Aztec, received them like if they were God, because their look fitted the story of an old prophecy. Cortes used this legend to manipulate Moctezuma and rule the population. In 1520, Cortes had to leave the city. The Aztecs, tired of the presence of the Spaniards and the weakness of their emperor, took advantage of the situation and pushed the Spaniards out. When Cortes came back, he reconquered the city and nearly erased it.
These ruins behind me are the only remains of the old Aztec city.
In order to erase all history of the old empire, Cortes built the new city of Mexico over the ruins of Tenochtitlan. The rebuilding of the city has been accomplished mostly by indigenous people and cost many lives. The Spaniards planned the city as agreed, like most colonial cities, such as Cartagena or Panama City. The Zócalo Square was and is today the central place of the city. 14 years later, in 1535, the Spanish viceroy arrived in Mexico. This is the start of the colonial period. During this time, the city expanded a lot, and Mexico became the most important city in the Americas. In 1810, the Grito de Dolores, also known as El Grito de la Independencia, marked the beginning of the Mexican War of Independence, that will last 10 years. In 1821, Mexico's independence from Spain was declared in the Declaration of Independence of the Mexican Empire, and in 1824, the Federal District of Mexico is created. The whole 19th century is a succession of war and invasions. By the US with the Mexican War, by the French and the British, with La Intervención and the Reforma War. In 1876, Profito Diaz is elected president. He ruled the nation for more than 3 decades. During this time, he developed the city's infrastructure such as roads, school, transportations, and communication systems. He also encouraged foreign investment and laid the ground for industrial development. His presidency was cut short by the Mexican Revolution, which left some of his work unfinished.
A good example of this period is the Monumental Revolution that you can see behind me. Only the columns and the dome were built.
Until the 20th century, the regime concentrated resources and wealth in the hands of a few people, while the majority of the nation languished in poverty. Social injustice led to nationwide revolts and ultimately the Mexican Revolution, from 1910 to 1920. During the revolution, lots of villagers moved to Mexico City. From the beginning of the 20th century to the 60s, the city goes from 500,000 people to 2.5 million. In the 60s, the population started overflowing the boundaries of the federal district into neighboring states of Mexico, especially in the north, northwest, and northeast. Between the 60s and the 80s, the city's population more than doubled to 8.8 million people. By the 70s, the government couldn't barely keep up with services. Mexico was choking in smog and pollution. Villagers from the countryside who continued to pour into the city to escape poverty only compounded the city's problem. This past decade, there has been a growth in the population, but a diminution of the density. The city tends to sprawl to the outside. All of the population growth in what is now called the Valley of Mexico has occurred outside of the urban core. In the 50s, the urban core represented 78% of the population. By the year 2010, it was only 9%. Today, the city of Mexico is one of the most populated in the world, with nearly 9 million people in the city core and 21 million in the metropolitan area.
Organizational structure. Mexico is a federal republic composed of 31 states and the federal district. Governmental powers are divided constitutionally between executive, legislative, and judicial branches. But when Mexico was under one-party rule in the 20th century, the president had strong control over the entire system.
So now I'll be discussing the firearms weapon and equipment used by the police of Mexico. So first, the firearms weapon used by the Mexican police is the M82. Mexico City is the flow of high caliber arms smuggled across the porous U.S. border has alarmed Mexican officials, and few weapons are as powerful as the US-made M82 semi-automatic rifle, increasingly favored by the powerful drug cartels. The M82 can easily penetrate bulletproof vests, concrete walls, and even tanks, say its manufacturer Barrett Firearms. It is also one of the weapons of choice for drug cartels, according to the Mexican government. Weapons such as the M82 are part of a torrent of illegal arms flowing south Mexico, alleges, partly due to the manufacturer negligent business practices that had encouraged illegal arms trafficking. In Mexico, the weapon has distributed the balance of power between criminal groups and poorly equipped police forces, according to the Romain Lecor Grand Mason, Program Director of the Mexico and Central America Office of NORIA, a think tank. And the raw power of the rifle, which weight of about 14 kg and 1.5 meter long, was on show in mid-2020 during a military-style assassination attempts of Mexico City police chief that was captured by the surveillance cameras. There are different guns used by the police of Mexican. First is the pistol, second submachine guns, third assault rifles, spinner rifles, machine guns, shotguns, and also grenade launcher. So now let's talk about the police uniform wear of the musician. So typically, agents of the federal police are heavily armed and wear dark blue, black, or gray combat fatigue. The federal police was officially dissolved and absorbed to the National Guard, a new national police institution created by President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador on October 1, 2019. This is the different car used by the Policia Federal.
Rank and insignia of Mexico. Mexico regionally adopted its system of officer ranks from Spanish military. With some modification, it has been trained in modern armed force. The highest rank within Secretariat of National Defense of RU equivalent of a general in United States Army. The only officer with the rank of general are current Army officers and former Secretary of National Defense. Generals are identified by insignia composed of 4 silver stars and a gold eagle worn on their epaulette. The next higher rank open both Army and Air Force personnel is the equivalent of the Lieutenant General. The officers separately identified by the 3 stars and an eagle. The rank equivalent of Major, General, and Brigadier General are distinguished, in addition to emblem the gold eagle on their epaulettes by the 2 silver star and 1 silver star, respectively. Colonels are identified by 3 gold stars arranged in a triangle on epaulette, the equivalents of lieutenant colonels, a select few of whom may command a battalion or cavalry squadron, but most of whom serve as instructors or administrative aides. Where 2 gold star majors sometimes serve as second in command of battalion or squadron, but usually are assigned to personnel management and training. They are identified by a single gold star. The best practices of Mexico. The Mexican NCB is a part of International Police Affairs Agency, called AIC. It is an operational unit, meaning NCB police staff can exercise police power across the country on behalf of the national police, including the power of arrest. The NCB helps police officers across the country to detect and investigate the flow of illicit goods along trafficking routes in and around the country. It plays a central role in preventing the country and surrounding region from serving international organized crime. The NCB has several outpost offices located throughout the country, including the Mexico City International Airport Interpol NCB office, which check travel documents against Interpol database to determine if they could be a security threat. The National Institute of Migration Interpol NCB office, which focuses on monitoring and controlling migration flows in and out of Mexico. Federals or Mexican Feds, term from Policia Federal Agent by some U.S. agent and media. Typically, agents of the federal police are heavily armed and wear dark blue, black, or gray combat fatigues. Mexico has a police force of over 544,000 people, making it a country with the 4th largest police force in the world, just behind China, India, and the United States. GOPES, or Special Operation Group, Special Police Elite Counter-Terrorist Hostage Rescue Unit.